With each Alien movie in the franchise, the return on your time has grown less rewarding. It's a little bit like all friends getting together and talking about old times and never making new memories. The Aliens games haven't had much more success, with Alien Isolation really being the only standout title and Aliens Colonial Marines making the movie Aliens 3 look like an Oscar winner. When Aliens FireTeam Elite was announced and it was going to be a third-person shooter in the vein of Left 4 Dead and more leaning towards the second of the movies with upgradable characters and abilities, I let hope slip back in. Are you guys getting the game? Have you already pre-ordered it? I'd like to know in the comments. Feel free to say what you guys think of the game, because this should be out in just the next couple days. And if you like the video, maybe subscribe. So at first glance, FireTeam Elite doesn't actually impress. It actually doesn't impress on the 40th glance, but it's not terrible. It tries to reflect that organic leakiness of H.R. Geiger's original works that were translated through the movies and the novels and the comics, and it does a fair enough job. The robustness of the Marines, the lockstepping through a still functioning door, and then everything falling into anarchy when the xenomorphs arrive, isn't without its merits when it comes to delivering action. Explosions light up locations and hallways that throw out shadows that almost always hide at least one alien waiting to have a gut-busting party at your expense. The animations, though, for running and moving and leaping over items do reflect a cumbersomeness of the Aliens Colonial Marines as a character base and a duty style, but they look really rough regardless. Even their leaping over a small, strangely placed concrete bunker noticeably is stoved up, like they're teetering ass over tea kettle at any one time and they're just gonna fall over. Or that first time you switch out weapons and you realize the character's arm just basically does a windmill pattern in the air and suddenly the weapon is in their hand. The aliens, on the other hand, aren't as bad. First, you get that moment where you shoot an egg and you watch the edges peel open and you can hear that sound like an orifice filled with another toothy orifice, and you see that facehugger crawl out. Or the ram's-headed aliens you face later on with huge crown-like triceratops nightmares for skulls. The aliens themselves, when moving, also catch the highlights you would expect. The first time one leaps from them flowing along the wall, making you readjust your aim, can feel like exciting movie-level moments. Later on, there are also other alien types I'm not going to spoil here, with specific circumstances that you're going to end up engaging them with. And the environments are no great shakes either. It's just disappointment on top of disappointment. I don't understand how you can grab the IP for Aliens and then say, hey, you know what? Let's just make a fucking tube and have that be the entire game. You have a couple options in the graphics, and really regardless, what you're going to see is a game that doesn't necessarily look up to spec for current generation. The performance, also not in the most amazing shape. It can't hit a locked 60 at 4K on the 2080 Ti during busier scenes, but also at times even in the closed-off scenes. Remember, a lot of these locations are basically just hallways. Since the game is built on that older engine, it doesn't have newer features like ray tracing, which, while that isn't actually required, we've seen a lot of games look great without it. The lack of it here, including the lack of DLSS, impacts performance and appearance. It does have a render percentage that you can adjust. The PC version is not exactly performant. As a package, Aliens FireTeam Elite doesn't look necessarily bad at first glance. And then as you continue to look at it, it's a little bit like a Chinese knockoff. And you're like, damn, really?
Thanks for the gun. I'll do what I can.
Controls on the overlook. Get that bridge extended.
Let's talk about the music. And this is done by Austin Wintory, who went for a very eclectic, somewhat matching in Aliens 2 movie style soundtrack. It's somber, excellent at times, but also very, very unique, like jazz or almost a bluesy sound when you're on the ship. These are different tracks that I know a lot of people are going to hear and go, wow, that's different. I don't know if you'll like it or dislike it. For me, it fit with sort of what I was expecting from the game, but admittedly, because there's so much action going on in it, it was very hard to hear theme-wise and tonally. When it comes to the sound, though, it's terrible. It's almost continually terrible. The guns, the side effects, the environmental play, they're woefully mixed to the point of being surprising. The gun sounds are the sounds from the actual movie. They sound exactly like the sounds from the movie. You hear that weird pterodactyl scream of an alien when it dies, or the amazing sound of the pulse rifle. The problem is none of it really ends up playing out layered correctly. A lot of times you won't be able to hear where the enemies are, or you'll hear one enemy but not another. You'll hear gunfire from one character but not another. It just really seems to have a lot of audio issues. This is something I tested on 3 PCs. It just doesn't sound good. It's unique too because they took those samples that we all know and are tried and true from the Aliens movies, especially a shotgun or a pulse rifle or one of those side-slung recoilless smart guns. Those things should absolutely fill the sonic sphere. They should be almost a cacophony of sound, and what we get is just sort of on the side. You want to make sure that it is great sound channeling through those different locations in the game level, and here it's really not. Another thing that's just not are the lips working on the characters when they're talking. They're just not moving at all. I have no clue why. They're full 3D characters, but every single person I talked to in the game world, none of their lips were moving, and I don't have an indicator of any kind of patch coming for that. It looks really basic, and it makes the game feel far cheaper than it would have if just a little bit of effort had been put in. I mean, how many times have we looked at a game and been like, their lips aren't necessarily moving perfectly, but they're moving? Here, nada. And it just makes everything look basic. And that basic and almost cheap feeling continues throughout. Aliens tells a story of yet another LV planet under some kind of alien trouble, and you and your Space Marine buddies have to land and figure it out. Fireteam is set in 2202, I think. So that's 23 years after the original movies. And it happens on LV 895 as part of the Elite Fireteam. You and two friends, or an AI mix, can take on an assortment of missions following the parts and plots taken from other movies and then put together as a new experience. You have a mix of these old and new alien types as well, which I definitely liked, but it feels like they were literally snipped from the movies and jammed together for every single mission. The game's basic format is to pick one of these 4 kits or classes like Soldier, Doc, and 2 others, and outfit them and then jump into one of these 4 storyline missions. Each of those have 3 submissions or the later unlocked Horde mode, and you take on the aliens while performing basic tasks like opening a door, closing a door, turning off a valve, or turning on a valve. And that's about as advanced as the game ever gets. Each mission usually has a number of small encounters as well as major ones in very specific, noticeable locations. Each mission can be taken on by 3 people. Difficulty adjusts your experience, as do these challenge cards you get that can adjust parts of the game, like making one weapon randomly malfunction, special kit abilities not work, harder enemies, and so on. Stuff we've seen before, but those did add some elements of replayability here. The issue is I just don't know anybody who'd want to replay this. The problem begins almost immediately. Weapons don't have a huge amount of impact, either on the enemies or on your own aim, regardless of their size. Though I would say the SMG at times did, depending on the settings, and the shotgun, that was fine. While some of the weapons in the Alien movies are actually fictionally built that way, other than the SMG and the shotguns, they don't feel very good, even like the rocket launcher. Also, the game has a ton of balance issues. While each enemy has a weak spot, and as you field new items on your guns, those weak spots are going to do more and more damage when you hit them. And by the way, that's preceded by this awesome little musical stinger sound. I love that. It just never feels satisfying. They're bullet sponges. The game is also let down by a woeful enemy AI. Regardless of the difficulty, it follows the exact same patterns most of the time to get to you. As you raise difficulty more, you go into these locations and the enemies will come out of different locations at different times depending on the difficulty. The issue is they usually still funnel into the same conga line location once they do come out, and that ends up feeling really cheap. The balance issues are also magnified the moment you go up against any of the more powerful enemies, like the drones, especially when it comes to how it throws them at you. They grab whoever they attack and can smash into them and hold them up and basically stun lock them until the person either does a quick QTE or people shoot it. This isn't exactly surprising. Most games have some creatures like this. Vermintide has those bastard man catchers. Earthfall had that giraffe creature with the huge tongues. And Aliens has the version here. The biggest issue is that the game also matches all this with a poor control and movement. Even locations for cover don't extend to the edges of the cover itself. You can see right here, the bounding box is well inside of the design of the actual wall. It's just weird and it never feels fluid. Lastly, the levels are a mixture of fatty numbers of enemies all in diet level structure, something I talked about at the starting. Everything is just emaciated. You can hide behind a wall, but when was the last time you saw an alien shoot at someone in one of the movies? Yes, they have the alien spitters, but that's pretty much it. Later on, there is a reason for this, but it doesn't come up that often. It's the fact that there are 100 other smaller creatures coming at you, and the game puts you into these super tight corridors and then also has control that isn't very good and combat that just doesn't feel super satisfying. It is very difficult to say, man, this is something I want to return to. When you look at the levels, they're barely explorable as well. They have a hidden cache on each one, but most of them are less than maybe 10 seconds away from the main funneled location hallway, feeling like just moment-to-moment tunnels to get to the new combat zones. With so very little exploration, such odd balance issues, the difficulty is more in finding something interesting after that first try in a level than it is killing the aliens, even though they're no slouch with their abilities to hold off enough bullets to supply 3 full-scale wars. You still don't really necessarily get that pull to return. Hey, but you know what? Maybe the pull is upgrading characters and kits. And I enjoyed this. Upgrading your characters has almost like a PCIe motherboard style where you slot in different upgrades into various different spaces. Each kit has 3 particular abilities. The abilities are where the game really changes things up as well as their modifiers. First, there are particular shapes, as I said, so you can turn them sideways to fit into more spaces, attach them to particular abilities that also can then change that ability pretty profoundly. For example, a missile barrage that's very rare but a lovable sight in the middle of a battle turns into a recharging, almost at will bombing run, which is great in lower levels when you don't do team damage, but shows its real colors of friendly fire and frustratingly fast ending screens in the higher difficulties. I have to tell you, you really have to adjust those depending on the difficulty, because the moment friendly fire even starts up, and I think that's on standard, it says it doesn't really affect your friends. It still does a lot of damage just with a pulse rifle, let alone a bunch of rockets in their ass. This does lend itself to some cool playing around, though. Rolling around with a Demolisher class and a Doc and a Gunner feels dramatically different than replacing that Demolisher with a Technician, or even just changing how the Demolisher's missile strike would work. Some of the perks are also adjusting things like the Gunner's ability to overclock the entire team. Weapons, when you upgrade them, run the gamut from handguns, shotguns, SMGs, pulse rifles, flamethrowers, rocket launchers, and of course the well-known smart gun. This was the most enjoyable part of the game for me, was looking at these weapons and upgrading myself. Also, due to the offset 3-person teams, there's always going to be a perk that you won't have along for the ride. The missions will depend on different strategies for those perks too. So sometimes having a doc along is not that big of a deal as having a Devastator and a Technician, just due to the way the landscape looks in that level, where the ammo boxes are and so forth, can matter. Once you start diving into the equipment, there isn't a huge number. I love that it's mostly positive changes, though, to the typical upgrades, instead of alterations that are allocated to positive aspects like range and damage and so forth, but also taking away something. This is mostly positive. There's some eclectic changes overall, but I love that refusal to do the tit for tat and instead making it all about learning one way or the other, utilizing the positive factors. That's awesome to me, and it actually felt very enjoyable to decide I'm going to go this way with really no negatives other than this is where all the damage will be laid out, and if I try to play a different way, well, I'll just do less, not be really hindered for it. The biggest issue is there's no way I would want to return to this game. What most other games offer here is variability in their environments. Couple that with increasing skills, abilities, perks, and weapons lists. The heroes get all combating the increasing enemies' difficulties and types as you progress. Aliens locations are not good. Straight up, many times it's gamified to the extreme. Walking through exactly 2.5 corridors before you know you're going to be attacked happens on any difficulty. Sure, on intense and above, you will see a higher number of enemies, or at least a makeup of them, but it's still almost always the same locations. And for sure, the same always bland corridor room setup. For an Aliens game, it just doesn't have the environmental chops it could have. And when you get into the later section, there's a couple moments where you're like, this is awesome. And then that awesomeness is pretty much almost instantly gone. Well, the game does have a number of settings. A couple of them feel almost like they want streamers to do this versus players playing it. There's a streamer-centric HUD system and all this kind of stuff. I think that that's okay. The number of challenge cards here will actually make you interested, and I think the changes to the game world is actually pretty cool. But for the most part, I don't know who the hell'd be watching it. The game could have done with a hugely increased mission style, experience, and level variety, more complexity in the locations, a balancing out of the odd cover system with more enemies that would actually end up needing it to be used against, better fleshed out explanations for the battle ratings versus the challenge ratings when engaged with groups. Alien FireTeam Elite, it doesn't tell you how much money you even have between levels. It tells you what you end up getting from the level, which is troublesome if you have some money and got some more and you can't remember the price of something and you don't actually know the totality of what you have. At least I couldn't find that readout. In an odd way, Aliens Fireteam captures all that tenseness and suspense of an Aliens movie for about just as long as the movie does, so about 2 hours. Then it fades out. And in a game that's about a bug hunt, I actually didn't have that many bugs. I was very happy to see that. Overall, no crashes, couple issues, like I said, with pathfinding. Connecting to people was very simple through the actual menu in the game. But did any of this result in any fun? So with games like this, there needs to be an it factor. There needs to be a variable that's entered into that equation that makes you look at it and come out at the other end with a different sum. Whether it's a huge number of skills, variations on weapons, interesting team dynamics, something has to be there. This has that it's Aliens, and that's about it. The piecemeal story is only matched by those piecemeal levels. They are incredibly drab and just not enjoyable. So anyway, as you guys know, I rate games on a buy, wait for sale, rent, or never touch it again rating scale. This one is a cheaper price. It's $39 for the normal game, and then you can pay a little bit more. I think it's $59.99 to get the full deluxe version, which I still think this is a deep, deep sale. It's incredibly clumsy. I think it's a game that after a very small amount of time, you have seen what it has to offer. There's so many issues with balance and so not enough variability everywhere else. I still cannot recommend this game at this price, even close. So anyway, that's it for me. I hope you guys liked the review. Hope it saved you some money. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Check out the Patreon. Check out these videos that you'll see popping up. That's it for me. You'll also see a review here in the next couple hours, if not already out, for Psychonauts 2.